Ladies and gentlemen, interment will follow at the Clover Hill Park Cemetery in Birmingham. At the family's request, we will not be traveling in procession to the cemetery. Anyone wishing to attend the interment, please return to your cars and drive on your own to the cemetery. We will allow ample time to get to the cemetery before continuing the funeral service, and direction slips, if needed, are located in the lobby on the register stands. The family will be sitting through this evening at the residence of Dr. Sheldon and Dr. Sonia Gonte, 7276 Hidden Brook Lane in Bloomfield Hills. Religious services will be held this evening at 7 p.m. Contributions in Henry's memory can be made to Camp Tamarack or to the American Cancer Society.
L'kol zman ve'et l'chol chefetz tachat hashamayim. Et la'leret ve'et la'mut. Et l'tat ve'et la'kod natua. Et li'prot ve'et li'vnot. Et li'vkot ve'et li'schok. Et sefod ve'et rakod. Et l'hashlich avanim ve'et knos avanim. Et l'chabok ve'et l'rchok mechabek. Et l'vakesh ve'et la'abed. Eit li shmor ve'eit lahashlich, eit li kroa ve'eit li por, eit li chashot ve'eit lidaber. For everything there is a season, and a time for every purpose under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to uproot. A time to tear down and a time to build up. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to discard, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak. And friends, this is a time to speak words of love and memory in honor of Dr. Henry Gonte, and we begin that sacred process of hesped or eulogy with words spoken by his three sons, Sheldon, Billy, and Gary.
So needless to say, my weekend didn't go all that well. I was kind of excited for the weekend, being spring was on the horizon. I was planning on doing some yard work, going out for dinner on Saturday with some friends, massage on Sunday, going out celebrating my mom's 80th birthday on Sunday. So I was taking my normal Saturday nap when I got the call that everybody dreads, from my brother Bill. He said to come over at sunrise, which was my dad's nursing home, as soon as possible. Now, even though my dad was not doing all that well, physically he was fine, so it was completely unexpected that he would pass in the near future. That's when everything changed. Now, 2 days later, I find myself standing here speaking before those who knew, loved, and supported my dad and our family through his life. The question is, how does one talk about one's dad, Henry Gonte, who liked to call himself Hank or the Kid, and where do you exactly begin? He was a man whose life came with many, many obstacles, but whose character overcame them with all the grace and dignity. To fully understand my father, let me start with these obstacles that made him who he was. He was born in poverty, lost his father at a very young age, and was forced into the role of patriarch of the family as a young teen. He used to say that he was so poor that even the poor kids on the block used to make fun of him. But besides this teasing, he always put his family first, supported him by whatever means was accessible at the time, which included doing a paper route before school and then one afterwards. He was able to supplement his income in increasingly creative ways. He would talk about those hubcaps he found on the street and get to make money with those, and later progressed to selling cigarettes to patients over the fence of a local psychiatric institute. He said that's where the money was. Nevertheless, oftentimes there was very little to eat between him, my dad, his mother, and sister. Occasionally the family was forced to go to bed hungry, but my dad's stubbornness soon prevailed when he was told that he was incapable of accomplishing a certain task. It was the time of year when most high school students go and start thinking about college applications. Now, my dad was still pretty unsure of his goals for the future, and not even sure college was in the ranks. But he said by meeting with his advisor, only to be told that college would be a complete waste of time. He was told, with no prior family history of higher education, he was strongly encouraged to forget about college and instead settle on working on the line for the big three. As a result of his stubbornness, pride, and refusal to accept no as an answer, my dad quickly readjusted his goals for the future. He wasn't much of a student in high school. It wasn't what he was all about. He knew he would go to college. He followed that by pharmacy school and eventually went to medical school where he excelled in his studies. 10 years following that meeting, he went back to his reunion, found that school advisor with swagger, and asked the advisor to kindly call him Dr. Gonte. It's a story he liked repeating. Lesson learned, never tell Henry that he couldn't accomplish something, because he would double down and prove you wrong. However, my dad's rough beginning and educational ambitions were not the only defining factor in his life story. He was also widely known as a passionate athlete. Growing up, there were very few sports he did not tackle. Basketball, golf, softball, racquetball, you name it. He liked to tell a story about walking by a tennis court where there was some kind of tournament going on. They were short one person, gave him a racket, he was able to win the tournament. However, his passion for sport was put to the test around 33. He was playing basketball at the JCC, something that he often did, when he got slammed to the gym wall while going for a layup. After this, he was shipped to the hospital with a broken leg, leading to the discovery of a chondrosarcoma. That's cancer. It was a bone cancer in his left leg. But this also ultimately saved his life. It was Bashir. After several surgeries and several decisions to be made, because there was some question about the diagnosis, he decided to amputate his leg. Many, many years ago, I asked him about that decision, because that's what a lot of people bring up, how tough that was. And he actually said to me, it was easy. I just want to see my boys grow up. His stubbornness served him well through college, pharmacy school, and medical school. Resurfacing again at this time, he refused to give up his identity as an athlete, insisting on pitching in softball games, shooting hoops in the driveway with his boys, playing doubles tennis, golf, and of course, racquetball, all on a single leg. Now, racquetball, seriously, he would play without a leg and a cane. But as you might expect, he continued to prove everybody wrong by winning several JCC racquetball tournaments with his family friends cheering him on from the sidelines. However, there's no Rachmanis at the JCC for a man with one leg after taking home a few trophies. He eventually had to quit when some of the opponents knocked him to the ground. JC sports can be brutal. After losing his legs, there was a tremendous amount of pain. He suffered from neuromas, severe spasms, phantom pain, and still several surgeries after the loss of his leg. He never complained. I only know about this pain from occasionally finding him in the living room, gripping the armrest of the chair, his face red, knuckles white, and shaking. His stubbornness led him to suffer in silence, as not to worry his wife and his boys. Even though a lot of people, the first thing would ask, oh, is that your dad with one leg? Or is that the guy in the schwitz? He's the guy with the one leg. He never considered himself handicapped or disabled. And I remember several times, well, I should say, he refused to use the handicap parking until absolutely necessary later in life. And I remember one time pulling up to a restaurant, and there was a spot in front. And I said, Dad, why don't you park there? If anybody's handicapped, you apply. And he would say that there was people who needed it more than he did. It's in this way that my dad stubbornly cared for others before himself. One of his oldest and dearest friends, Stan Halpern, told me that Henry was always there for you no matter what, that he could always count on Henry to do the right thing. My dad was well respected by his colleagues, valued by his patients, and loved by his friends and family. He was fair, he was honest and determined man. He treated everyone equally. He was just as likely to have meaningful conversation with a janitor as he was a college professor. He never discriminated, judging people by their character instead of their appearance or reputation. It is these characteristics and values that lay the foundation for how I strive to live my life in his image. Although my kids might joke, and they do, that I embody his stubbornness more than anything else, I also believe that my dad shaped the man I am today and what I consider to be important. I hope to continue to commemorate his life through my decisions and actions and pass these values on to my children and their children. He was a unique man that I'm honored to call my father. May he rest in peace.
I first want to apologize ahead of time because I'm going to speak too fast, because I just speak too fast. Okay. I also want to thank everybody who came here tonight from our family, for our family. All the texts, all the emails, all the phone calls we received, we really appreciate every single one of them. My brothers and I, we won the parent lottery. Our parents were perfect parents, better than anything you could ever wish for. They gave us unconditional love and everything we ever needed. They were also the perfect couple, deeply in love, a match that was truly made in heaven. My dad would do anything for her, and she did everything for him. Who could forget my dad's loving cry of, "R, R, R." This is kind of a way of him asking nicely for some assistance from my mother. Today we're here today to celebrate my father, who has always been my hero. To know Henry was to love Henry. He was a very unique individual, always had an opinion, and always really willing to speak about it. To those who were fortunate enough to have a conversation with my father, otherwise known as listening to one of my dad's long, drawn-out stories or one of his racy jokes, I apologize for the hour of your day he took away from you, but I'm sure you thoroughly enjoyed it. For those of you who didn't have the opportunity, you truly missed out. So we're sitting in a ceremony much like this, my father and I, maybe 5-6 years ago, and my dad whispers to me. Now, I have to explain what it means when my dad whispers. If you listen to my father, you would assume he was deaf, because his whisper would be projected throughout a room without a mic. So, and a good example was we used to go to physician meetings, and of course we had to sit at the front, and my dad would whisper, "This idiot doesn't know anything." And then a half second later, the guy would turn around and say, "Yeah, I do." That's why I'm getting paid to speak. So we're at this funeral, and my dad whispers, he says, "Can you believe this? They're just going on and on about all the great things, you know, like, come on, this guy's a schmuck." And he goes, "Promise me," and he goes, "two things. One, when I die," and he gave you the date of his death, but he was off a little bit, but it was close. "I want you to go up and speak. I want you to cut it short." And he goes, "Don't just fill it up with things to make it look like I'm this great person and come up with all these lies. Just cut it to the chase and give me the information." Okay, well, that was what I was going to do, okay? But there is a famous basketball coach, Jimmy V. And Jimmy V won a national championship with North Carolina State. And Jimmy V, unfortunately, after that, lost his job and then became a sports announcer and became very famous on ESPN. And then very much unfortunately, he developed cancer and it spread throughout his body. And Jimmy V, in his search to get a cure for his cancer, found out that there was a lack of sufficient funds going into cancer research because of the HIV epidemic. And he started a foundation. And he was honored at the Emmys in 1991 or 1992. And he came up and did a famous speech. And when I said he walked up to the podium to do the speech, he couldn't even walk. He had to be carried up to the podium. And Jimmy V is giving this dramatic, unbelievable, inspirational speech. And the theme of this speech was, "Don't give up, never give up." That's always been my dad's motto. But on top of that, in the middle of the speech, there is the prompter saying, "You're done, get off, get off." And Jimmy V turns around to the guy and goes, "I got cancer going throughout my body. Do you think I care about your stupid monster? I am going to speak, so sit back and relax. I'm going to tell you about my father." So I wanted to tell you the story of Henry, what I like to call Dinner with Dad. It's my version of Tuesdays with Maury. The story is about the circle of life, and the first chapter is called The Kid. My dad's mother came from royalty. They came from Russia, but at that time, shooting Jews, people went around shooting Jews for fun. And my grandmother was a smart woman. She decided it would be better off to be poor and alive than dead and rich. So she fled to the United States with basically nothing. My dad always had a very difficult life on the surface. As Sheldon said, he was poorer than poor, but he doesn't really give you a full example of how poor he was. The poor would give to the poorer, and those people would give to my father. He basically lost his father around 16. He had to support the family. He did it with a newspaper route, unique endeavors that he got himself involved with, and he fed himself by playing sports. He was a great athlete, and he would play for the local bar and he'd bowl for them, he would play softball for them, and he'd play several other sports, and he'd be able to eat free, and that was the deal. So if you knew my father, my dad had a voracious appetite and he could out-eat anybody in this room and without breaking a sweat. And and I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. So he also would go around hustling pool. But my dad never gave up on any of this. He became this great athlete, and the nickname that he stuck to himself was when he was young, he used to always go to the field and play with the older boys. And he was the youngest one there. But they would pick up teams and initially never get picked because he was the youngest, smallest one there. My dad wasn't exactly a monster of a man. But one day, when they were picking up teams, one of the older guys said, "I'll take the kid." Okay? And my dad ended up playing that day, was the best player on the field. And from that on, the name The Kid stuck with him. And he tried to live up to that for his entire life. Actually, the license plates in the back of his car said The Kid. And so that's why we call him The Kid. So fast forward, my dad, he meets his soulmate, he gets married, he has babies, he becomes a doctor, and he graduated first in his class at med school. He has a great life, and my dad's favorite song at some point in our lives was Harry Chapin's Cats in the Cradle. And he tried to emulate that song in the sense that he'd always want to spend quality time with his children no matter what happened, which is something he relished and wanted to do. It was very easy for him to do, playing ball with us in the front lawn. until a tragedy hit him and he lost his leg. But he never gave up on that. My dad never thought of himself as a handicap. I was just talking to my friend Danny Kyle, who grew up with us, and Danny goes, I never thought of your dad not having a leg. I always thought of my dad as just being your dad. He would race my friends in the front lawn. He'd throw footballs with us. He played basketball with us every day he came home from work. My dad, when he lost his leg, he was told it was going to he had a very high stump. So they told him it was going to take him a long time to be able to walk, but with time, with patience, with effort, he'd be able to have a prosthesis and be able to walk and function, basically just walk. 2 weeks later, he was walking. He became such an inspiration that they kept bringing him back up to Ann Arbor, and he would drag me up there often. I'm sure my brothers on occasion were lucky enough to go for the ride. And they would try all the new legs and all the new devices on him. And we did this for years. And then at a point, we started teaching people how to utilize the leg, actually how to not just walk on a leg, how to golf on a leg, how to throw a football on a leg, how to play ball on a leg, and do all these other things. And continue to do this throughout the years. I went with him to a handicapped golf outing on one occasion, and there were swarms of people that came up to him and said, you might not remember me, but you taught me how to swing a golf club on a leg. You taught me how to walk on a leg. Hundreds of people walked up to him, different ages, throughout the event. It was shocking to me, the amount. Then at one point, my dad met somebody, and he started volunteering with the vets, and he was mainly working with special op military that lost their legs or limbs. And he would do this for a long time, and he dragged me into it. We did it for years on end. And he after he retired, came to work for me, and we worked in a facility that certifies for marijuana. And he worked with the patients, and my dad spent hours with them. He would explain to them why the stuff would work for them, how to manage their pains. My dad actually is a pain expert because he's experienced so much pain. Sean talked to you about how much he never let on to how much pain he was really in, how much struggle he had on a daily basis just to get to work, just to get back. He would spend this time with these people, and to this day, they come to my office and go, "Where's your father? I want to thank him for what he did for me, and I want to ask his advice about my medications." So one day we're in the office and we're working, and all of a sudden, in comes a flock of military in their uniforms, and they basically take positions and line themselves up in the door, and they're all armed. And I go, "Oh no, DEA is coming in here. This is, they think we have pot in the back. What happened? What did my dad do?" Okay, and then in walks this big, gigantic individual, and he looks like a Secret Service agent. And I go, "W's coming to see my dad." And in what wasn't W, but in came a 3-star general. And he walks up and through there and through all this stuff and comes in and goes, I need to see Dr. Henry Gonte. And so see Dr. Henry Gonte. He comes up and presents him this honorary thing for services to the military, and especially the Marines, and he told him that he's part of the Marine family and will be for life. Because he was helping these people for 20 odd years of volunteering his time with them on a regular basis. I don't even think my mother even knows this. He would do this on his own. So my dad never thought of himself as handicapped. My dad would oftentimes joke about his leg. He would be at dinner, and we used to go to all these all-you-can-eat meals, or he would go someplace where my dad would order 2 slabs of ribs and ask for more food, and they would come up to him and they would go, "Where do you put it all? Do you have a hollow leg?" And he goes, "Yes, actually I do." And there was another time when my dad grew up, as we explained numerous times, very poor. And so he would sit playing ball in the street and watch the wealthier people that have jobs at the auto plant drive away in a car. And his dream to have a car. But he wanted to dream of the big car. So the Cadillac or the Continental. And the Continental at the time was the bigger car, and all his patients were from Ford anyways. So he got the biggest Continental you could find, the most gaudy Continental you could find. And so he's driving the expressway one day, and this is when CBs first came out, and traffic slows down, and the truck driver behind him, for whatever reason, decides slams into my father. Car's an accordion. Thank God he had the tank, otherwise we would have had this funeral several years earlier. And so the guy was all shook up because he saw the car and he got a little worried. So my dad walks out of the car and his leg goes. And the guy, I'm not trying to be a racist, but the guy was Afro-American. He turned as white as a ghost. And my dad was sitting there consoling him for hours and then getting on the CB and trying to say, how does this stupid work? Come help me. This stupid thing's broken. He wasn't high in technology. And then I want to give one other amputee story. So my dad enjoyed sports. He especially enjoyed golf, especially later in life, because it was probably the easiest thing he could do. Running the bases was kind of out. Football was kind of out with one leg. So he became an avid golfer. And he would play with his group all the time, and he had a difficult time with his leg because he'd get welts and other medical conditions I don't want to go into that were very, very painful and very difficult for him. So I remember playing with him one day, and the heat, the leg would kind of get loose, and have to keep adjusting it. It was very much a pain, but he loved to golf. So for some strange reason, I don't know why, I was young, I said, Dad, why don't you just try without the leg? And he goes, good idea. So he didn't hesitate. The next time we went out there, we went on there on the golf course. He goes to the first tee. He's very coordinated on one leg. He went up there, hopped up, put his tee up there, lined up the shot. He's ready to go. He wasn't going to take a nice soft shot. He winds up and takes a full swing and falls right on his ass. Boom. He looks up at me and he goes, what? And I go, well, Dad, I think your center of gravity's off a little bit. We had like a 2-minute dissertation of what we should do. We set the ball up, hit it down the middle. For 25 years, never fell again. And played golf. And I hope a few of you at least had the opportunity to golf with my father. It was quite an experience. He also, as my brother said, he was an exemplary man. He took care of his mother. Not only did he call her all the time, he stopped by after work every single day to see her and take care of her. And she was sick for 20 years in her life. She required medical treatment on a constant basis, and he provided it all to her directly. Hang on. Okay, so I'm going to skip something I don't want to say. Probably a good idea, right? Okay, so my dad always provided quality time with our family members, especially my brothers and myself. Later in life, he required those same types of dependency upon us, but my mother oftentimes would say to us, I don't want to be burdening you. I don't want you to feel obligations to your father. But it never was a burden. It was a pleasure. And we all openly provided whatever my father needed from us. He eventually had to give up golfing. He had to give up working. He slowed down. But he kept his wit, his humor, and his compassion. He should have lived out his life enjoying his family, the things he loves, TV, movies, sports, food, beer, conversation, more food, especially his ribs. But much like Muhammad Ali, God stole his special gift of gab and conversation. And that brings you to the end of life, the circle of life. It gets complete. In the first years of your life, you're totally dependent on your parents, and as he became later in life totally dependent on us, once again he became the kid. There's a morality to all of that. Your parents and you would never neglect the needs of a baby. You would treat your pets at the end of their life with compassion and caring. So you should do the same. You should do the same to the elderly, and you should put that burden upon yourself because it's not a burden. It's an honor. It's a privilege. And I spent a lot of time with my dad at the very end. And in fact, I was with him at his last breath. He brought me into the world and experienced my first breath. And I watched him leave the world, and he took his last breath. So today is a beautiful day. It's a Henry Day. So and if you're so inclined, go to the golf course, golf, finish up the golf, have a slab or two of ribs, and have a beer in his honor. Thank you.
So I'm so glad I waited for my brothers to speak because I have nothing written whatsoever. And their stories kind of blend together a little bit. But I can tell you my relationship with my father. And I was always the baby, and I was never held to the standards of my brothers that were excellent students. And my dad was probably one of the fairest men you ever meet. So he always said, look, I don't expect you to be like Sheldon or Billy. But if you're a C student, bring me home a C, not a D. And then if you're a B student, bring me home a B. Just give it all you got. And so I might have fell short a couple times, so I went downstairs and got his report cards, and he had plenty C's and D's. So, you know, he says, you get in what you put in. So he was very unique in that sense. And he did take me to the office. We did have military come in, but it wasn't to honor him. It was because I pushed a button underneath, and I think my dad had a couple rifles up his tushy. So we all did that and went to the, I don't know why he did this, but he always had to have adjustments with his leg. And it came to a point where it was ridiculous. But he always took us with us, and I was always the youngest. So I got to go to Ann Arbor, real pleasure, in the burn center, to see all these people in the burn center at 7. And then he introduced me to his friends that had no arms and a few with no legs. So it was a very interesting experience. I always asked him why he did that. And he says, because people are people, and what's it matter if they have arms or legs for? And he truly never really considered himself handicapped until later years. So I used to play basketball with my brothers or friends. He used to come out of his car in a suit with one leg. He'd say, give me the ball. And he'd take about 5 jump shots, all swishes. And then the weird thing is my mom would roll up, and she'd come out and take a foul shot, go like this, and bank it in, because she was the coach of her elementary basketball team. So my dad had a lot of redeeming qualities. I can't imagine having better parents. I was always the baby, so he kind of treated me a little different. He really liked to impose and was very actually analytical. I don't think I really needed to know how the concentric circles of a toilet goes down and what law of physics pertains to at 9 years old. But he always described things in medical terms, anterior, superior, whatever. That was his thing. But that's who he was. And you know, general practitioner back then was kind of frowned upon a little bit, being a DO over MD. And my dad delivered 200 babies, did biopsies, and I always say he was a great doctor, not so good of a businessman. So he'd spend 20 minutes with each patient. Well, there's only, you know, that's 3 patients an hour, I'm thinking. But he always, that just patients felt better just talking to him, being touched, and how you're really going to complain to a one-legged man about your back. So, you know, I believe he made house calls as well. So he recognized people and treated everybody the same. He had a lot of pride, and he respected people's pride. So I was at his office, and a lady came out with 800 pennies and put them on the table, and I said, Dad, what the heck is that? Her bill's $8? He said, no, it's about 1,300. But she's got a lot of pride, so we let her bring her, we tell her it's $8 so she can go on and feel like she's taking care of her Bill, and had a lot of pride. So he respected people and where they came from. And ironically, that same day, we went to the gas station. So his office was here. He always went to the gas station. And he started talking like a Southerner. He said, "You all," and stuff like that. And I was very puzzled. And I said, "Dad, why are you talking that way?" And he says, "You got to wear many hats to relate to many people." And the guy was from the South. So that was kind of interesting because I never expected my dad to say anything like that. So he had a love of life. He had a love of people. Even in his later years, I told him I saw a handicapped guy with no legs at Costco begging. And I said, "Should I give him money?" He says, "Who gives a crap what his deal is? He has no legs." So I went back there and I found him, and I gave him $10. So, we know how poor my dad was. He was a 12th Street boy, and my brothers aren't exaggerating, he was that poor. But what he lacked financially, he had in heart. If he didn't have my mom, he would never be the man he was before. It was a very difficult situation. I don't remember my dad losing his leg. I don't think I was ever at the hospital. And I kind of blocked it out. I was sleeping over people's houses. Miss Jean's nursery school. I was at Miss Jean's. I was at other people's nursing schools. Just sleeping over. So actually, it really didn't hit me till I was 32. I started crying of why my father was punished and why did he have to have one leg. And I realized he's that much more of a hero to me. And that's why God did it. So I would just say that he's very unique. There'll never be another one of him. He would want us to talk about him. That's why I'm just shooting from the heart. He'd want you to go watch the video on Facebook of him golfing. He wanted to be known. And he had a very weak understanding of the internet. So when I posted the video and I explained to him that his great-great-great-great-great-grandkids can see his tape on ABC, he couldn't figure it out for the life of him. It will always be there forever. So he was one of a kind. We'll always miss him. But I'm really sure he's probably on the 9th hole right now with his pitching wedge. So he was a very special man. And I think he's in a little part of all of us. So that's what I cherish.
With 3 such beautiful and comprehensive eulogies, you would think there would be nothing left to say. But I'm a rabbi, so you would be wrong. Actually, I will skip a few pages. But I do want to spend a few more moments on the love of his life. Because I asked her, "How did the two of you meet?" And she said that I had a crush on him in school. And we met at a friend's house and started dating. He was 17, she was 15 years old. And that is a love that has lasted and created all of this beautiful family, these many, like hundreds of doctors in the family, all of these beautiful grandchildren. They had such a beautiful relationship. You've heard a lot about it. I won't go too much into it. But one thing she told me was, I think, really telling, was that when he lost his leg, he really wasn't interested at all in what it would do to him. He was very worried about what it would do to her. And of course, she was there for him 100%. She told me also that he loved his Judaism, and that was important to him. The same row at the same seat at shul for years and years and years, fasting, observing the traditions. And the kids told me that they were very funny together. Matter of fact, they called them very sitcom-y, an old-fashioned couple. And this relationship led to not only wonderful children, you've heard from them, and I won't repeat too much of it, But most importantly, it led to these incredible grandchildren who are truly the fulfillment of his every dream, everything he wanted from that difficult beginning to create this miracle. And that came to him in the form of Brittany and Josh and Maddie and Brett, who called him Papa. They told me that their Papa was very particular in his ways. He liked to pass on wisdom, and he'd do it in an odd way. He'd sit down and tell you a 15-minute story. You had no idea where it was going, but at the end, there was a nugget of brilliance, a lesson to be learned. And he also wasn't a typical grandfather. For instance, one of the things he was very important to him to teach to his grandchildren when they were very young was how to pour him a beer. Now, you think that would be, there might be a skill you can use, but he was drinking Miller Lite. There was really no wrong way to pour it. He loved to talk to them about being a doctor. And even at the nursing home, they told me that he would see patients. These were just other fellow nursing home, and he would give them he couldn't remember their names, but he would give them a diagnosis. He was a jokester, and he would keep you involved in the joke by asking you questions. They remember the Sunday night dinners together. Racing with him in the living room. He would just hop around, sitting on his lap. And the fact that he loved food, you've heard a little bit about his empty leg, but at Sunday night dinners, when they were leaving at 9 p.m., he was still eating. He was still going. They remember him letting them drive the car, or letting them steer at least, when they were just little children. And he welcomed Josh into the family with open arms. He got the Henry seal of approval, which is very, very important. So he's 82 now, and his time has passed. And according to our tradition, he is one of the Kadoshim, one of the holy ones. As it says in our Torah portion, Achrei Mot Kadoshim, after you die, you become holy. But if truth be told, he has always been one of the holy ones, with a good neshama, a good soul, transforming a difficult life into a life of healing, a life of family and love and determination and fun. He was a schwitz schmoozer. He was a one-legged inspiration. He was a healer. He was a father. He was a husband, a grandfather, a loving son, as you have heard. And so I would submit to you that Dr. Henry Gonte has always brought sanctity and meaning and goodness and life into the hearts, minds, and very souls of all who loved him. He was truly one of the good guys, or as we say in our tradition, Kadoshim. He was one of the holy ones. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may it be your will, O God. And let us all say, I ask you now to rise for the memorial prayer. El Malei Rachamim Shochen Bamromim Hamtzei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei Hashchina Im Kedoshim Utohorim Kezohar Harakia Mazirim Et Nishmat Henech Ben Velva Umalka Shalach L'olamo Baal Harachamim Yasterehu B'seita Kenafav L'olamim Vitzror Hachayim Et Nishmato Began Eden Tehei Menuchato Adonai Hu Nachlato V'yanuach b'shalom al mishkavo v'nomar Amen.
We can have the pallbearers please step to the front.